Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. We are continuing our discussion in the four-part series, and in this episode, we will look at how can we motivate users to adopt and use our applications that we are doing in the enterprise space. Deepak, what are your thoughts on how do we motivate users? Like we're doing the application, and but then we have to motivate them to do it, right? And especially it becomes hard when it is not a compliance kind of a thing. And anyway, you discussed about painful motivation and pleasurable motivation.
Yes.
You can talk about both of them as well.
The appraisal system is a necessary evil. People have to do it no matter what. It's once or twice a year. People will do it, and you get automatic 100% adoption. But the difficult ones are the ones where people have an option not to use something, or where there are multiple other ways to do it. It has to be part of solving their day-to-day life issues. It makes it easier for them to just do it, and then it spreads like wildfire. Then it becomes very easy. We took an example of how SharePoint became adopted, and we talked about how there was almost no great effort spent by a large number of organizations in getting SharePoint adopted. It just happened because people talked about it, people found it easy to use it, and it solved some real problem of sharing documentation. How are you empowering the users to solve their own problem or solving something which was really bothering them? Right? So in my view, that is the key factor of motivation.
Also, can you just talk about in Procia, we talked about that change management.
If you look at from the frameworks perspective, ProSci talks running this, when you're doing this application development projects, the adoption or the change management project should start in parallel to that. Right? It should not be at the end of so it should run in parallel to the whole application or the technical project. The adoption, building of those whole the sponsorship behind adoption has to start at the beginning of this project, not at the end. So that is
similar to what we talk about performance engineering. You don't do performance engineering after the project is done.
Exactly.
From the requirement stage, you have to think about performance. It's not an afterthought. So how to motivate users starts even before the application is. That's a very interesting and an important point. Raja, you've had some experience in doing this because you were trying to drive adoption across very experienced senior execs, where it's a little more challenging, where there are strong likes and dislikes. So
Absolutely.
Maybe you can share.
It's not only in the change management, even during the inception phase of the product, how exactly the idea is generated, how exactly the idea can be visualized in that process itself. So how to engage the users to visualize what is in it for them. So the best method for doing that is co-creation. So get the users upfront, even in the inception phase, try to co-create with them the product ideas, the product implementations, the change management, everything follows after that. So how to make sure they are involved upfront in the inception, to visualize what it is for them, and make sure they take the ownership and an accountability of what is going to be coming out of the outcome. And then the adoption becomes much easier because the senior folks are part of the creation process, and that accountability will be there for them to get it adapted across the organization at the enterprise level. So co-creation is one of the key aspects of doing this.
And just to focus a little more deeper, when you talk about they taking ownership and accountability, that is more you want to make it happen implicitly than explicitly. It's not like making a RASI matrix and then putting their name and say, now you are accountable for the adoption. No, it's not that. It's intrinsically and subconsciously making themselves accountable and take ownership.
So there is no project management RASI kind of stuff that we have to enforce. Again, it's not that way. The motivation actually, the personal motivation is more important than having a forced motivation, right? How to make the personal motivation happens with the senior executives, making sure their ideas is also part of the product. So the product implementation is their idea as well. So it is not coming from somewhere from a third party or some top management giving something so that it needs to be implemented across the enterprise. Rather than making sure the co-creation activity happens along with them so that their idea is what is part of the implementation. Their idea is also getting an outcome for the organization. So that's the kind of a motivation we are trying to build in implicitly along with the senior stakeholders.
Very interesting.
I have a question for you on this train of thought which Raja has brought about. What if the senior management has bad ideas? A bad idea is something which may not work at the ground level, because sometimes senior leadership, they are not connected to how operations or the downstream people actually do their day-to-day job. So they may have a wrong idea about something, or it may be a misconception for all we know. It may not be intentional. So how do we, because since we are doing it at the inception stage, this may create a sort of a cascading effect of bad decisions being made in the future.
So idea validation is one of the steps as part of the inception. So during that phase, we identify who are the people who are necessary for this implementation as part of the change management. Get them as part of this feedback mechanism. How to get them as part of the feedback mechanism to the top management, to the people who are actually conceptualizing this. So enabling that feedback loop is one of the ways that we can eliminate this.
I think the change manager's job is to identify an audience for that, design a quick MVP, execute it, and get the feedback back in, so it's not a personal opinion anymore.
Yeah.
Validation. I think that's a very important point, Raja.
That's part of the design thinking process.
One thing which kind of came to my mind is about, we could actually use hook model. And I think that is a pretty interesting thing. It talks about there is an internal hook and then there is an external hook. And Deepak talked about compliance. So that's probably an external hook, but it doesn't last very long. And then the internal hook is what Raja was kind of talking about. And I was mapping it to this as you guys were talking. It's about the ownership and the accountability that comes from the inception stage itself. And how to simplify the action is probably another thing that we can look at it. And variable rewards is, if you do more, you will get more. If you do less, you would get less. It is like sales incentives or commissions, which is there. The more you use, the more you will get. The less you get, the less you. I don't think we have systems which have that. The systems have a very flat model. Whatever input you give, this is the output you will get. You give 1 unit of input, you will get 10 output. If you give 100 units of input, you will get 10 as output. In some cases, it's even more bad. Even if you don't get any input, you will get 10 output. Or all inputs are given, but 0 output. Now, I think, for example, in this case, if I'm using Teams as an application, if I'm using it more, what do I get out of using it? Of course, I get to use it, but beyond that, do I get a recognition as a fast adopter or doing something like that? I guess that is also very important to motivate me to continue using it. I think that's clearly a thing which lot of enterprise solutions today do not have something explicit in telling, this person is actually being able to use this application better. And probably in the gaming world, that is why leaderboards work very fine. And gamification as a concept has been there for many years. But then any gamifying concept doesn't fit in with the scheme of the business. It stands alone somewhere. In some corner of a screen, you go click kind of a thing. It is there. But I was like, for example, let's say a disk booking system that is needed. Somebody who optimally books a desk, or somebody who books a desk 2 weeks in advance, or somebody who doesn't cancel bookings at the last moment. There is no rewards built into that. You are the most reliable booker of a remote workplace. Or we have meeting rooms booked, people book it, nobody cancels it, and it goes waste. So I guess these are possible opportunities for the variable rewards. And somehow the applications has to enable the actual business driver with these tools so that it grows in along with them. They want to drive it, the tool gives them something, and both converge together and help them drive the whole thing. I think the last was the key important point which I realized. Just like we all know in the tech and the enterprise space, performance engineering cannot be done after a project is or a solution is developed. How to motivate users and how to adopt them cannot be done after a solution is done or it's implemented. It has to be thought even before the actual solutioning starts itself, which I think is what Raja and Deepak you were talking about. Whether it is, you can have different tools. Prosy as a method, Raja was talking about co-create. But I guess the key concept is motivation of the user starts even before we have started solutioning the application.